Good morning everybody. I hope this finds you in fine fettle wherever in the world you happen to be watching us from. You are on a live dawn safari in a very eerie atmosphere here on the second day of spring in 2015. Now I am standing on a Combretum apiculatum tree that has just flushed its new green spring leaves, and that's why I'm standing on it, because the spring does excite me greatly. You are with WildEarth TV if you happen to have stumbled across this website while searching for shoes on the internet, and please don't carry on with your shoe search. Stay with us. You're on a live game drive safari, like I say, from the wilds of a little place called Juma. Now, Juma is only 900 hectares, which isn't massive, but we're part of the Greater Kruger National Park, which is 2.2 million hectares, which in turn is part of the Greater Limpopo Transfrontier Park, 3 countries that covers: Zimbabwe, Mozambique and South Africa, and we are sitting on the very western edges thereof in magnificent South Africa, and you are most welcome. And because it's a live safari, it's also an interactive safari. So what we'd really like is that you should ask us questions, anything you happen to like. We have some regular viewers who ask us questions all the time, and if you're a new viewer or perhaps a regular viewer who doesn't ask questions and send comments, please feel free to do so. We had a couple yesterday from long-time viewers who asked for the first time, and it was lovely to hear from them. Hashtag Safari Live if you're tweeting like a small chin spot Battis, or questions at wildearth.tv if you're on the email. Now, our plan this morning is basically to try and find some tracks. We had some amazing lion activity yesterday, but the lions seem to be calling well to the north of us today, so our plan is just to drive around here and see what form of tracks we can find. Now, what I would like for you to do... Oh, sorry, I need to introduce myself, of course. That's very rude and remiss of me. My name is James Hendry, and I will be presenting to you, along with my colleague Scott Dyson, who looks like something off the cover of a Men's Health magazine. He's on the other vehicle. On camera today, we have Bryan, who is of 6'4", of a great hulking South African magnificence. And then on the other vehicle, we have Wium on camera. He's about 5'3", of not so hulking, but nevertheless magnificent South Africanness. Then in the final control, we have Tara and Nikki and Louise. Louise has just joined us from Johannesburg. I'm sure she's very pleased to be out in the magnificent wilderness that is the Kruger National Park. So that's the team who's going to be taking you around today and providing you with the wonders of this great wilderness that we find ourselves in. What I would like you to do now, if you don't mind everybody, is to have a look at this tree while I climb out of it, because my climbing skills are not always that elegant. So if you hear branch breaking and a scream, don't worry, I will be fine. That was in fact very elegant of me.
Bravo, James, bravo.
Thank you, Brian. Thank you very much. But what is interesting, this tree, while I was standing on it, is a remarkable plant. And it's one plant. It used to be a sort of standard issue tree that had a trunk and a couple of leaves and maybe a few flowers and fruits. And then the elephants tore it down. And I think they've torn this tree down probably 3 or 4 or 5 times. And you can see how it's modified its structure accordingly. It's covering a huge area here. And I think it's probably quite an old tree, and it will continue to be modified by elephants as the years go by, and it'll probably continue to grow. Magnificent Combretum tree. I think it's the most common one that we get, the red bush willow, or Combretum apiculatum, but it might be the large fruited variety. I can't really tell at this stage. Okay, with that, and without further ado, let us carry on. I say it's eerie today because there is a bit of a wind blowing, and it does give the bush this kind of eerie sound. And when the weather's like this, the dawn chorus is not much more than a mutter. It's about 17 degrees, they tell me, in Celsius, and 63 degrees Fahrenheit, so not unpleasantly cold at all. But there is an eeriness about it, and we think there's a cold front sort of coming through. And by cold front, I mean slightly off volcanic, because the temperatures already have gone up to 36 and 34 degrees here. Right, let us see what we can find. Thank you very much for those of you who religiously watch the Juma Dam Cam, Bob, PK, Dennis, John, various others who said they saw a serval, first of all, which is extremely exciting, yesterday evening. A serval, for those of you who don't know, is a small wild cat, sort of a bit taller than a domestic variety, beautiful golden coat with black spots. So very exciting to have seen that. I've only seen one at Juma. And then apparently there was lion calling, and also perhaps the bellowing of a buffalo in distress. So Scott is in that area now, and if there is a hapless buffalo that happens to have met its end at the claws and teeth of the Birmingham boys, I've no doubt we'll find it. But thank you very much for your observations and for telling us what you've seen. It is very important to what we do. We're heading towards Treehouse Waterhole at the moment. Treehouse waterhole, there appears to be, Bryan, nothing. Water. Not a lot of water, a lot of mud, possibly the odd catfish. We'll drive up onto the wall and see. Plenty of buffalo evidence you can see around us here. By evidence I mean, of course, large piles of dung. So no great herds coming down to drink at this stage of the morning. We'll just have a little listen. Always important to have a listen. Doesn't look like the most appealing sort of bath, if you like.
Or a soup.
Or a soup, yes. A dung and algae and mud soup. So just while we're looking at that magnificent soup, a quick update on the lions. For those of you who don't know, huge turmoil in the area. 5 young males trying to take things over from 2 much older experienced males who've scarpered to the south. The system, or the change-up and the number of male lions seems to be causing great upheaval. There are a number of females that have been killed as a result of this. We don't know why. We're still trying to understand it. One of the Matimba males, who used to be the territorial male here, killed a 2.5-year-old female yesterday. Don't really know why. Various postulations, none of them, to my mind, particularly viable. But yeah, we don't know. So if anybody has any explanations for why a 10-year-old or male should kill a 2.5-year-old female that he isn't related to, would love to know what your thoughts are. She did look sick, but I don't know that that's the reason. It might be, it might not, I don't know. And then, of course, these 5 Birmingham males have now killed 3 lionesses, which is very odd. But not apparently in this area uncommon. So the lions are going to occupy our minds for the next little while. Right, let us continue. And for those of you who haven't seen the Birmingham male lions, a beautiful shot of the moon there. The Birmingham male lions are probably from the same pride. In fact, they're definitely from the same pride. But they're not brothers necessarily, all of them. I mean, if they were, it would have meant that 5 of them were produced from the same litter. And definitely, as Sharon has pointed out, one of them seems to be a bit older than the others. And Sharon, you want to know if he's about a month older. I'd say he's probably closer to 6 months older, to be honest. So I think absolutely there is definitely an age gap between the Birmingham boys. See how beautifully the sun has lit up the edges of the clouds and touched them with a beautiful pink color. Can we see that at all? Oh, there we go. Oh, that's beautiful. And then the other big pride that's been, well, part of that pride of two young females is called the Styx pride. The whole pride is called the Styx pride. They broke into three. They've now seemed to come back into two, and the breakaway consisted of two 2.5 females, two 2.5-year-old females. They're now 2.5. Now there's only one of them. Then there were two 10-year-old females and two 6-year-old females, away from each other. The 6-year-old females, one of them had 3 cubs. Now what's happened is the Birmingham boys have killed 2 of those cubs. There's one left. It is still alive. And she has joined up, the mother of that cub has joined up again with the 2 10-year-old females, and they are being seen quite often with the 2 remaining Matimba males and down on Mala Mala. So that cub is still alive. As long as they remain around the Matimba males, and stay in the south around Mala Mala, my guess is that the cub will be safe. Whether that will happen or not, I don't know. I'd say that things are pretty precarious with that cub. So, Donna Jean, that was your question about whether or not the cub is alive. It is still alive, but for how long, we just don't know. Get hold of Scott quickly. Just getting an update in my ear from Scott. Getting a quick update in my ear, trying to figure out what's going on, then I'll tell you exactly what's happening. Sorry, Scott, what was that update? Clear, but what I can tell you is that the Birmingham boys are on Torchwood. Now, Torchwood, for those of you who don't know, is to the east of us, and we can't go there, unfortunately, but like I say, in this 3.5 million hectare expansive wildlife land that we find ourselves, the animals can come and go as they please. So the Birmingham boys are on Torchwood to the east of us, which that means they haven't moved very far from where they were yesterday, and that's not too unusual, it's not astonishing, but they have been moving huge distances at night. Last night they didn't. Perhaps they just decided the Tuesday night was time for an easy one. We're now heading towards an area called Twin Dams, a great misnomer, especially this time of the year. Well, there is no water, there is only dust, and possibly the odd catfish lurking down below the surface of the mud. Talking about water, there will be a lot of water distress going into the dry season. Well, we're in the dry season, but it's really reaching its height now, and in the next month or so it will become even drier than it is now. And Charlie, you want to know if any of the water in the water holes is still drinkable? Well, that water at Treehouse waterhole will absolutely be drinkable to animals here. They don't tend to worry too much about the freshness of the water, except elephants. Elephants, while they will drink that if they have to, will prefer fresh water. And so there are a couple of little water holes near the Gari Dam that are pumped, and the elephants will choose to drink that rather than that muddy sort of cesspit of algae and buffalo dung that we just went past. So just to keep you posted, Scott is having a little bit of trouble with his communications, so I'm afraid you're stuck with me for the next little while. And Bryan. No tracks as yet. And we're now heading on to the lowest portion of this reserve. Oh. Okay, everybody, I'm not sure if you saw that. If you didn't, I'm not going to explain it. But we're not allowed to view those animals that we just maybe saw sort of there in front of the camera. Because of the poaching scourge, we choose not to show rhino at all. And obviously, when you come around the corner and you just find one on the road, there's nothing you can do. But it is, to me, very exciting to see them. Anyway, he's heading off peacefully into the bush, where hopefully he won't be seen by us, certainly for the next little while. I'm just going to let him disappear. Sorry about that, everybody. Bryan reacted like a cat, but it was still not it.
It wasn't quick enough.
Well, I don't think anyone could have been quick enough. Right, so we're going to pretend none of that happened. We're going to just rewind 5 minutes and rather like in Men in Black, you have had your memory erased. Now, you would like to know about any further leopard movements that there have been. Lindsay, what I can tell you is that Shadow and the newly named Madiba, aka Nelson, is now on Arathusa. They were found there yesterday in fine fettle, so they're all okay, and there's no issue with them. I followed tracks of who I think was Mvula into this area 3 days ago. I didn't manage to find him, unfortunately, but I think he's around here somewhere. I don't see who else it could have been. Tingana was seen mating again. Lucky fellow, he is. South of us with Kwatile, we think. That was 2 nights ago. So there's quite a lot of leopard mating going on. And then Karula, we haven't heard of for a little while, but I think she's spending more and more time to the east. And I suspect that's because of the pressure exerted by Shadow. They will tend to avoid each other like that, even though Shadow is her daughter. But I think, the leopard territories they're not fixed boundaries. Well, they are within a certain area, but they will shift about within that sort of home range. So I think Karula's around this particular area too. Also, not a lot of roads in this area, so we don't see her tracks as often as we might. And then 2 youngsters, the 2 wonderful male leopards, Quarantine, 3 years old, and his brother Kunyuma. We had Quarantine right around here about, when was it, Bryan? About a week ago? No, a week ago? About a week ago. And then Kunyuma, Brent had about 2 weeks ago, Brent had foot that would have made sense for it to have been Kunyuma, and he's, I think, hanging around in the north. Both of them seem to be hanging around in their father's territory, though. Their father is Mvula, and so that's quite interesting. There's a lion track, Bryan, but I don't know if it's a new one. It's not an old one. That's interesting. Just going to have a quick look here. See where these lion tracks go. See him there. This is interesting. So this can't be the Birminghams. This looks like a male lion to me. I'm going to attempt to find you a decent track so I can show it to you. Get it off there. Just got to assess how fresh I think they are. I'm not convinced that they're that fresh. There he is, he's there. He's coming up the road here, where he would have gone from here. Certainly wasn't coming down the road that we just travelled. Perchance he is lying under a bushel close by. I don't think they're that fresh. Single male lion, possibly from early yesterday evening. It was quite windy yesterday evening, so the tracks will be slightly obscured. What I think we'll do is we'll head off to the east along a road called Mumba Road and see if we can't pick something up there. And while we're looking at one single male lion track which has now disappeared off the road, bear from Ontario in Canada, you want to know if males in a coalition ever turn on each other and then split up. They do sometimes split up, but they very seldom will turn on each other and actually have a physical fight. So yes, they do sometimes split up, but that's normally a function of the size of their territory. So they take over a big territory, then what will happen is that they may split up and sort of share responsibility. Just hold on 1 second, everybody. I just need to address Craig on the radio. Good morning, Craig. Okay, copy. Thanks, Craig. Okay, so the Birminghams, as we knew, were on Torchwood, and they've now headed off east into Nkoral, so towards the Kruger National Park. Nice answers from Lisa, Chris and Crystal about the Matimba male lion, why he's killed that 2.5-year-old female. And I think the explanation you've given is the best that I have so far. And basically, as Lisa said, it's probably some form of displaced aggression, where the stresses and strains of the pride takeover are being meted out on a more vulnerable animal. And I think that's precisely what's going on. Well, that's certainly the most obvious answer. The postulation that maybe the 2.5-year-old female wasn't, because she wasn't at breeding age yet, well, that's nonsense, because a female can breed at 2.5 years. It's certainly possible. And I mean, if that was the case, every lion under the breeding age would be killed. So I don't think that's a viable explanation at all. So I think that displaced aggression one is possibly the most obvious, but there was a statement made once, and I forget which biologist made it, but it meant a lot to me when I heard it. And that statement is that nothing in biology makes sense except through the lens of evolution. And basically what that means is all things that happen in biology need to be looked at through the point of view of what is the advantage to the animals of there being a certain behavior or a certain trait. And this is one of those things that I really cannot see an explanation for, especially in terms of advantage to the species or the individuals. The only thing that I can think is that the young lioness did look sick to me. And yeah, I think maybe that combined with the displaced aggression perhaps combined to make her an easy target or a target for frustration. Oh, look at that. Just go a little bit forward, sorry, Bryan. Wendy in Nebraska, will the Matimbas still just stay in Mala Mala? Wendy, good question. Answer is I don't know, and that's why it's a good question. We just don't know what's going to happen. We don't know what they're going to do. It's very, very difficult to say at this stage. I think that we'll stay down there for a while. I think also that the Majingalan coalition, which has the large southern and western section of the Sabi Sands, their territory is so big that the Matimbas may be out there on northern Mala Mala for a while without being noticed. And then another brilliant question that's happened, we've had a few times, and this time from Vince in Texas. For those of you who don't know, the Matimba Coalition apparently was 6 lions to start with. 1 disappeared or was probably killed, and then they split into the 2 that we've had here and 3 up north in the Manileti. And Vince, you want to know, will they join together? Well, it's not unlikely. I'll tell you why, because the Majingelani males of the southern and western Sabi Sands, that's magnificent. Let's stop and have a look at the sun while I answer Vince. Vince, it's really not unlikely, but because the Majingelans do it all the time. Apparently when one of them calls or when there's distress, they come together like, look at that, that is very post-apocalyptic. So Vince, they do come together, the Majingelan males. We haven't seen the Matimbas doing it though, so it's not impossible. Whether it'll happen, I don't know. Oh, that's beautiful. Wow. Right, I think we'll carry on now. No further tracks of that single male. Beautiful. Oh. Almost as good as the sunset we had yesterday. Look at the clouds. It's really not a trial getting up before the dawn when you get to look at this sort of thing. Magnificent. Good job, Bryan, good job. So you can see very clearly now that we're heading in an easterly direction. For the sun doth rise in the east. Right, Carolyn from the Sabi Sands. No. I've got... Shall we start that again, Brian? Carolyn from Chicago, not in fact the Sabi Sands. You have asked an interesting question, and one that has a very clear answer. You've said, perhaps you're a new viewer, and if you are, welcome, and it's lovely to have you along. Why are there no tigers in the Sabi Sands? Carolyn, there are no tigers in the whole of Africa. They have never occurred here, as far as we can tell, and they only occur in Asia, all the way from India into the far east of Russia and China, and there are various different subspecies of tiger. Panthera tigris is the zoological name, and there are various different subspecies, all of them endangered, except, in fact, they're all endangered. The most endangered, of course, is the Bengal tiger, which occurs in India, and the most endangered is the Amur tiger of the Russian Far East. In fact, I think the South China tiger may be even more endangered. No tigers in Africa at all. Carolyn, and so you're not going to see any on Game Drive, I'm afraid. I would love to see a tiger in the wild. I've yet to see one, but it's not going to happen today or any other day that I'm in the Sabi Sands. Further tracks of that single male lion, I'm afraid, yet, but we might be lucky. And apparently only 4 of the Birmingham males were found on Torchwood going into Nkoro today, so that's also very interesting. Maybe this one is the other one, of the 5th one. Thank you, Lucy in South Bend, Indiana, for complimenting Bryan on his on his picture of the sun. He is a Cheshire cat. Really is quite a magnificent picture of the sun. And what you must understand is that what you're seeing now, the exposure that you've got on your screen is exposed so that my face is in the light. But what we are seeing here, our eyes are remarkable. Our eyes are seemingly able to expose for brightness on the horizon and then sort of darker light in the foreground. And so I can see that magnificent sun as you saw it in my view all the time now. It's just very magnificent. Keep driving straight into it for as long as we can. Fortunately, we're going to have to turn north fairly soon because we're going to run out of property. It's quite a blustery morning. And I know it was raining very heavily in various parts of the Cape yesterday, so perhaps this is the front coming through. It's not going to rain here though, not unless something very odd is going on in the atmosphere. To keep looking at the road for tracks. If you're wondering why I keep looking over the edge of the car, it's not because I have a tick. It's because we just sometimes see a footprint on the road. We need to check out what it is. There's hyena, Brian. Just getting Brian to look over the left-hand side. They are hyena tracks, thank you, Brian. Ooh. This bird. That's quite an unusual bird, everybody. It's called a black-breasted snake eagle. So named for its black breast. See how it struggles to fly in the wind? Watch the tail turning all the time. balancing, then it turns into the wind and it's much easier. But as soon as it turns to fly with the wind, or sideways to it, that tail has to work extra hard to stabilize the flight. Now, if that was a confiding bird, it would turn and fly gently across the rising sun and provide us with an award-winning picture. There you can see its black breast and the fact that its chest is white. It has one cousin in this area, and that is the brown snake eagle, so named because it is in fact brown, not because it eats brown snakes. And I'm just going to get you a picture. Well, it will eat brown snakes, of course, or it'll eat snakes of any color. So here are the snake eagles as the sun rises beautifully in front of us. That's the brown snake eagle, and what you've been looking at there is the black-breasted snake eagle there. Beautiful bird. And Carol, you want to know, would anything eat catfish? Perhaps a snake eagle. I think a snake eagle might eat some catfish if it could get hold of them, but it wouldn't take them out of the water. And catfish would definitely be eaten by a number of birds. The storks would eat them. The fish eagle, of course, would be a big candidate for catfish devouring. But at the moment, those catfish in those ponds are just the biggest ones left. So, I mean, a lot of them are sort of this size. And that's too big for anything. A fish eagle could take a catfish that size, pick it out the water, but the storks and the herons and those sorts of birds are, they don't chew or break up the food, they swallow it whole. And so for a catfish that size would clearly choke all but the most massive stork to death. So yes, catfish absolutely get eaten, but at the moment they're so big, only the biggest ones are remaining, and so very few birds other than a fish eagle would be able to take them. And then the other thing is that a fish eagle, I think, will struggle to take them out of that mud where they are now. They won't see them properly, and they don't want to get caught in the mud and then be unable to fly away. So I think those really big ones are probably quite safe from birds. But leopards are very good eaters of catfish. They're actually very good fishermen. But again, they don't like to get stuck in the mud, so they will try and avoid getting their feet wet in the mud there. Thing that might also eat a catfish is a hyena, and hyena would go into the water and pull them out. But again, yesterday or a few days ago, we were fossicking about in the mud trying to catch a drone. That does sound like a very odd activity. Perhaps it deserves some explanation. So we were trying to fly a drone around, and when I say we, I mean the brainchild behind, or the brains trust behind WildEarth. He bought a drone with a wonderful camera on it to get some aerial views, and we were testing it. And unfortunately, while flying over Gari Waterhole, the only piece of water within a sort of 3-kilometer radius, one of the drone's propellers detached itself and it dived straight into the catfish-infested Gari mud. Now, what that did, quite apart from providing a lot of amusement and no little cost, what it did was allowed us to go into that waterhole and have a feel around. Now, for a hyena or a leopard to go in there with their shortish legs, I think trying to hunt a catfish in there would be almost impossible. The mud is so soft and so deep that I think they'd very quickly become mired were they to run around in there and try and catch a catfish. So I think that's why the leopards and hyenas are not having a field day there at the moment. We're now on the far eastern boundary Thank you, Lynn. I think I preempted your question there, and so thank you for it. Right. Praise be, we are not alone out here in the wilderness. Indeed, my colleague Scott Dyson is mobile on his way to find various things, so we're going to pop across to him and see what he has to show you, and I'll see you a little bit later.
Hello everyone, and welcome on board with myself, Scott, and I'm teamed up with Wium on camera. We've had a small problem with the comms this morning, and that's why I've got an earpiece in this ear, getting comms from the final control, as well as this ear, getting comms from the game drive channel. So that's why you may notice something a little bit different, but we should hopefully be able to still be in contact with this little handheld radio, but it will limit us a little bit to how far we can go. That's not a problem. There could be animals close to camp, and that's where we are now. We're in the quarantine clearings, and I'm not too sure where I'm going to head initially, but it's great to be out. It's quite a moody morning, as I'm sure you've gathered with James. A bit of wind, clouds, there's been a beautiful orange sun coming and going behind these clouds, and I would actually like to just stop and show you. It's quite impressive. Beautiful. Now I'm thinking of probably heading initially to the western parts of Juma in the hope that we may find some sign of Shadow, a female leopard, and a 12-month-old cub. Madiba, who a lot of us have been calling Sindile for quite some time, but that was just the name that WildEarth and Safari Live gave to him because we were spending so much time with him. But now he has been officially named by Sean and Reese, the guide and tracking team from Arethusa, who were the first people to find that leopard cub 12 months ago, roughly. So now we're going to have to get used to calling him by his new name, which will take some time. It was actually quite difficult, as over the radio we were so used to calling him Sindile that we would call in on the game drive channel that we found Sindile, and nobody, or none of the other guides had used that name or would typically use a name before the cub is of independence to a degree, or at an age where it's likely that he will survive till adulthood. So that's something that we need to start thinking about. I initially did check our northern boundary, or at least a portion thereof, in the hope that we would find sign of the Inkahuma pride, which was found late last night, far north in Buffelshoek, close to the Manyaleti boundary. And their last movements were heading south back towards Juma, but no sign of them coming back, sadly. And like James has told you, the Birmingham coalition has been found quite far away. There are some hyena tracks heading down this road, and they're an interesting animal because they do head big distances every night. Got a very interesting update through from Diane on Twitter, and thanks very much for sending this through to us, Diane. And that is that at around 3:30 a.m., about 3 hours ago, the Juma waterhole cam picked up some audio of buffalo bellowing, And there was also audio of some lion at around that time. So that's interesting stuff, but I'm not too sure how it will all work out because there's no sign of any lions around, and the Birminghams have been located quite far from us. So interesting stuff. Maybe we've missed some of their tracks, and it may be worth us looping around the Juma waterhole a little bit later. But maybe it was just some excited buffalo coming to drink at the small pond that's kind of out of view of the waterhole cam. I'm not sure if you would have been able to pick them up if they were drinking. They're not from the small body of water that holds the catfish. Ah, there was a pretty little bird called an emerald spotted wood dove that just flew up off the road. And it had been quite some time since I've at least showed you one of them. And it was just yesterday that I was mentioning it would make quite a funny clip if we cut together all the attempts where we've tried to stop and show you birds and they've just flown off. We could probably do a 2 or 3 hour clip on that because it happens so often, but it's always worth a try. There's quite a lot of fresh buffalo dung around us here, and maybe those were the buffalo that were heard bellowing last night. No sign of any lion tracks around them, but you can see all these landmines scattered around us. And there is a herd of bachelor buffaloes. There's about 30 or 40 of them that spent time here on Juma, and I'm guessing that's who you heard last night. Interestingly, I did head out at about 7:30 last night to see if we could get an idea of where the Birmingham boys were going to go, but when we did get to their last position, they weren't there. But on the way there, we did see that bachelor herd of buffalo taking a drink at that little waterhole close to the Juma waterhole cam. Those of you who were not on yesterday's morning drive, I'm not even sure, I think I did mention it, but we did see the same herd that I'm talking about now. And within that herd there was one individual that was really walking very slowly, battling to keep up with the herd. And I'm wondering if it was in fact the same buffalo bull that we saw looking weak at the Juma waterhole cam about a week ago. And we all assumed that the Birmingham males had killed that individual when they made their most recent kill on our property, which was about 5 days ago now. But it may not have been that bull. So either there's a couple of them that are weakening, which is very likely because at this time of the year, the older and weaker animals will really start to lose condition. There's not much food around. And without food, they lose condition and start showing signs of weakness very, very quickly. And what we can expect to see is an increase in weakening animals over the coming month of September and October until we get our first rains, which will seriously help the herbivores. We've had a tough season, tough dry season due to a low summer rainfall last year. And there's a little bit of a bet going around in camp. I still haven't put in my date as to when I think the first rains will come, but we are going to have official betting list as to who thinks the rains will come and when between the cameraman and the presenters. Bryan fancies himself as quite a weatherman, So the pressure's going to be on him because he always calls when the weather's coming, and he's usually quite sharp actually. I'm not sure what connections he has in the weather systems, but he usually is quite in tune with the rainfall. I think what I may do is probably choose the same date as my birthday, which is on the 5th of November. And that'll be fitting if I win a bet on my birthday and the rains come down then. It's the most awesome experience when the rains do finally fall. Every single one of us will run outside and literally immerse ourselves in the moisture, and the smell of life that comes through as those raindrops hit the dry earth is something that really does get everyone excited, and it's a wonderful experience to be a part of. So I'm seriously looking forward to that, as are the rest of the team. So anywhere from where we are now, we could bump into Madiba and Shadow, a leopardess and a cub that I spoke of a little bit earlier, because this is the area that they can move through. They were seen not very far from here on Arethusa yesterday, so hopefully they will come back onto Juma and we'll be able to track them down shortly. James quickly and see what he's been up to and what his plans are. James for Scots. Well, he might be off the vehicle tracking because he's not responding. So that's a good sign. Hopefully he's hot on the trail of something exciting. Ah, there we go, he's back. James, just wondering where you are and what your plans are. I'm going to be checking the western side of Juma. And Rebecca's now heading north from Philomath's. It might be worth checking the Buffelshoek boundary between Gowrie, Katla and the dam at some points. Okay, copy. So that's good news. We are through default working 2 different areas of the reserve, and that's great because we are going to divide our efforts until one of us potentially finds some tracks worth following up on, and then we can collaborate our efforts in the search. Speaking of tracking down animals, we've got a question through from Miss Jen, hello, and She would like to know, how do you go about establishing whether tracks are fresh or old? It's a very, very difficult art or science, the art of tracking mischief. But basically, we are fortunate because we are out every day. We've got a very good idea of which tracks have been called in and which haven't. So it's our continual experience of being here daily that helps us to most of the time know whether tracks are fresh or not, simply by them being in an area where we know they weren't the day before. However, if we were taken into this area after not being here for a few weeks and we didn't know what had been going on, the things you need to look for is the crispness of the track. You factor into that the weather, whether it's very windy. If it is very windy, obviously sand will blow and the track won't look as crisp as it would if the weather was calm and smooth. So the crispness of the track is one thing you can look at. But if the weather has been very good, then maybe the tracks wouldn't have deteriorated. So then what you would look for, and this is what's important when tracking mischief, is that you don't want to look at one individual track. If you find tracks of lion walking down the road, it's best to take a 20 or 30 meter walk, checking up and down, and that way you increase your likelihood of finding other useful pieces of information. Possibly a white-tailed mongoose, a nocturnal animal, has walked on top. What have you seen, Rhea? Hey?
Scorpion.
Oh, awesome. We haven't seen a scorpion. What I'm going to do is I'm going to... Oh, no ways. This is a cool scorpion. Let me jump out quickly. Oh, my earpiece is tangled. Okay, I'm free. Kind of. How did you see that, Wium? That is incredible. Now, I don't want to scare it, which I have. So I'm going to go back into the vehicle. And that specific scorpion is called an Opistophthalmus glabrifrons. Sadly, the only scorpion in South Africa that does have an official name is the hairy thick-tailed scorpion, which is the most venomous scorpion that we see, or that we get in Africa, and it's part of the Parabuthus family. Now, interestingly enough, this scorpion, and I really must apologize, I shouldn't have jumped out, I just got so excited. I love scorpions. But what this specific scorpion is doing is that it's clearing out its burrow, and this is a great sign of spring. The scorpions, arachnids, insects are really starting to come out. And yesterday, even just sitting with the Birmingham boys, Jandra and myself noticed an influx in insects. And that's something that I'm really looking forward to in the coming months. This specific scorpion lives in sandy burrows that it excavates itself, and that's what we saw it doing now. So it's getting ready for the new season. It's probably been dormant for the whole of the winter. And what we will see is a lot more of these scorpions, especially out on the roads at night. We will see this scorpion more than any other scorpion, and they often move around on the roads. They can be quite aggressive, and what you may have noticed, though, is that even though they are aggressive, we don't have to worry too much about them. You may have got a glimpse of its very large pincers, almost like a lobster or a crab. And as soon as a scorpion does have very big pincers, you can assume that the danger is coming from the front end. And even though this specific scorpion also has quite a thick tail, we don't have to worry. I actually have been stung by these for research, and it's not such a bad sting. Like a bee sting, probably a little bit less. And what's interesting about it is that it can stridulate. It can rub parts of its tail against its body, causing a hissing sound. And that's what helps to deter any predators or humans. And like I say, we will be able to show you more of them in the coming weeks and months, as they are the easiest scorpion to find in this area. Now, as I said, this specific scorpion lives in sandy burrows, but there are many, many different types of scorpions that occupy different little habitats within this wilderness, and you can often be very surprised at how many scorpions are in a wilderness area without you knowing. and that is because some of them live in trees, in cavities within trees, or in the bark, the tiny cracks of the bark. Others live on stony areas, so they're very specific with their habitat. Some like to live on stones on top of sand, so they make a burrow between the stone and the sand. Others like to live on rocks, on top of rocks, always in small crevices though, because they're ambush hunters, and they'll often wait at the entrance to their burrow, or a crevice in the tree, or a sandy burrow like this, or a rocky outcrop, and wait for their prey to come past, and then they'll run out, latch onto it, and either sting it, which this scorpion will do, but it also does have the big pincers which it can use to crush and kill its prey. When a scorpion's got very thin pincers that are actually difficult to even see that they are pincers, and a very big thick tail, that is when you need to be careful, because that tells you that the danger is not coming from the front. Those tiny little pincers are going to act like a knife and fork just to help get the food into the mouth, and the sting is where the damage is going to come from. So big lobster-like pincers, not too dangerous. Small pincers, big tail, dangerous. Size and color does not make a difference, so don't be fooled by that. People often assume that color makes a difference in terms of the scorpion's venomosity. And Wium, I don't know how on earth you spotted that. That was the spot of the year, I think. And again, I do apologize for jumping out excitedly, because I think that is what scared it back into its hole. But it's the first scorpion I've seen in quite some time. But now we know where it lives, and we're going to be able to keep an eye on them. We'll keep an eye on this specific one. But let's carry on. Whew. That got me very excited. Sent through a funny comment saying the scorpions are no different to the birds. They see the camera and run off and hide. But the good news is, Charlie, is like I said, we will find those specific scorpions, the Opistophthalmus glabrifrons, on the roads at night, and it will usually be the males moving around looking for females. And they've got a very interesting way of mating, and you can actually tell the difference between a male and a female scorpion simply by looking at its pincers. The females, or rather the males, will have, it's going to be difficult for me to explain, but basically in their pincers there'll be, even when they close, there'll be the small gap, and that what they can do is then latch onto the female's pincers without hurting her, and there's this little perfectly designed gap, and what they will do is be head to head, and the male will latch onto the female, and he will deposit his sperm on the ground, and then he'll pull the female over his sperm, thus getting it into her eggs and fertilizing her. So it's a very interesting pulling and pushing technique for mating, and hopefully we might just be able to see that. Another cool thing that we will be able to show, and I can't wait for this, is that if you shine a UV torch or a black light onto scorpions, they fluoresce like a glow-in-the-dark toy. So that's something we'll also be showing you in the coming weeks and months. It's absolutely crazy. And a few different reasons or speculations as to why they have this ability to fluoresce. And a lot of the animals, especially the insects, actually can see in UV wavelengths, and also flowers often give off UV wavelengths. So the flowers attract insects that can see in UV wavelengths, and there's a thought that possibly the scorpions will just like a flower, attract insects towards them. That's one theory. Another theory might simply be inter-scorpion related, so they can see one another. But that's something that you will really be blown away by. And it doesn't matter what color the scorpion, whether it's black or brown, when you put that UV torch on it, It will glow a green color, just like a glow-in-the-dark toy. For tracks here, no sign of anything, and we've got a few questions on the scorpions. It's something a lot of you haven't seen before, or at least for some while, and Raisa and Ramey are interested to know if this is possibly the same scorpion that the white-tailed mongoose ate when we were doing camera checks the other night. There is quite a strong chance it was this one, but it also could have been an Opistophthalmus, and it's the Opistophthalmus leopards, which lives on the ground, and the Opistophthalmus asper, which lives up in trees. They both look very, very similar, and basically the only difference is the habitat that they occupy. The leopards living on the ground, and they're usually rock on top of rock, and the asper being arboreal, living up in trees. I would lean towards it being an asper because we don't have very many rocky outcrops here, or any at all, so I don't think we will be seeing the leopards, but the Opistophthalmus asper we will be able to find in small cracks in trees and small holes in trees. And just to let you know the name one more time, it's called an Opistophthalmus glabrifrons. If you just type in, yeah, I think that'll work out, Opistophthalmus glabrifrons. I can't remember how to spell the Opistophthalmus, but just try and work that one out. But the glabrifrons is Glabrifrons, glabrifrons. So I think you will be able to find that one. And what I'm going to need to do is get my scorpion book out into the vehicle, and as well as my insect books, as times are changing and we need to get ready for these changes. So I will be able to show you a picture in my book, but I sadly don't have it on me today. Wium ambushed me with his spotting skills. It was the last thing I expected to see this morning. We're on the topic of arachnids, we can answer a question that's just come through from Ginny. And Ginny's wanting to know, when will we likely be able to see the red Romans, or a solifuge, or a sun spider? It's three names, all used for the same animal. And they are actually out and about. We saw one running around the campfire after fireside chats on Sunday. That was the first one I've seen. And it's not a true spider, but it is an arachnid, and it does look very much like kind of a tarantula, fairly big bodies. They're still growing though now, and the one we saw was very small, but they do get quite big. And they're incredibly quick and run around and are very light sensitive. So they often chase your shadows, and it appears like they're chasing after you, but they're just trying to stay in your shadow. Thankfully though, they aren't venomous. They do have very big chelicerae, or mouth parts, you could say, and they can bite you. I haven't been bitten by one, but if you do pick one up, you don't have to worry about being envenomated just by getting a painful bite. That's all you have to worry about with them. tricky to show you though, because like I said, they're incredibly quick spiders, and we're going to have our work cut out for us to try and show you one of those. What we may need to do is get a little specimen box, a clear specimen box that we can temporarily catch them in and put them in, just so you can have a quick look, and then we release them. Topic of creepy crawlies, Barbara's interested to know, when will we start seeing the dung beetles? And I know James was chatting about them last night. Any time from now. I mean, each season is slightly different, but anywhere from now, probably closer towards the first rains, which is the main indicator for a lot of insects to become active. Time from now, we could start seeing some of the earlier and more active dung beetles. There's a lot more little insects that we can expect to see. The golden orb-web spiders is one that we will see a lot of. Beautiful big spiders, also not venomous at all. They cannot bite us. Well, I think they are venomous, but they're I've just lost the word. It is chelicerae, their mouth parts. They cannot penetrate our skin. Even though they're quite big, I don't think they can envenomate us at all, even if they wanted to, so you can hold them if need be. But interestingly, they're quite a clumsy scorpion when they're in your hand, because they are so suited to life on a web that they tumble around and aren't very coordinated when on a solid structure like your hand. Moths, butterflies are another insect that we can look forward to seeing in their masses. What else am I forgetting about that's exciting? I'm sure I'm forgetting about a lot. I mean, there's a multitude of changes that we can expect. Now on the topic of reptiles, due to a question sent through, I think it's from Lisa, asking if we're going to be seeing any land turtles. And there are sadly no such thing as land turtles, Lisa. They are tortoises. Turtles are always water-based, and tortoises are land-based. And we certainly will be seeing the Speke's hingeback tortoise as well as the leopard tortoise. Those are the two tortoises we get in this area. And just to clarify on the topic of turtles and tortoises, we also get the terrapins here, which are essentially freshwater turtles. Sadly, no sign of Shadow and her cub coming back this side into Juma. They could still be on Arethusa, so if James doesn't have any luck here, we may need to ask him to go across to Arethusa to see what's going on there. Sadly, I cannot go much further away from the final control room than I am now, because already I'm battling to communicate with them, and without comms with final control, there's a massive problem, because then I cannot interact with you guys and we don't know what's going on. So I'm quite limited by the fact that I'm using this little handheld radio this morning. But everything happens for a reason, and that may force us to go into an area where we may find something exciting, so fear not. And technical glitches are inevitable when there are this many variables in getting a live safari to you guys all over the world. until Wium finds the next scorpion, we are going to send you across to James for an update on how he's doing, and hopefully we'll have something interesting for you when you come back. And they actually found a scorpion. Very cool. Hello everybody. Quite remarkable. What? Quite remarkable that you have seen a scorpion in the middle of the day. Stand by. There's a little bird there, Bryan. On the ground. Tiny little fellow. He didn't look like he was going to fly off. There he is. There he is. Can you see him? Just a small bird, everybody. There he is. That is a lovely little bird called a Stierling's wren warbler. Oh, that's might be one of the best sightings I've ever had of one. A Stierling's wren warbler. And you can see the beautiful barring colour he's got on him. Isn't that wonderful? A little Stierling's wren warbler, and the call is sort of. That's the basic rhythm of the call. Really nice to see. Now, I believe Wium managed to find you a scorpion, which is quite remarkable. Especially, I mean, they're quite findable at night. I hope the arachnophobes amongst you were not too freaked out, and that you will be able to sleep when next you lay your head upon a pillow. Look at that. Beautiful. Stierling's wren warbler. Very nice. What we're doing now, everybody, is we're heading towards the hyena den, and we're hoping to find a bit of action there. So, you've been having a long discussion with Scott about the rain and what differences it's going to make out here. And of course, as I'm sure he told you, the major difference you're going to see in the species that we see is an increase in the number of invertebrates. So snails and insects and arachnids and perhaps the odd mollusk. Well, a snail is a mollusk. Perhaps the odd crustacean. I mean, we do get the odd crab in some of the rivers here. So all sorts of different things that we will see when the rains come. And Lisa, you're in Phoenix, Arizona, where I believe it's not particularly rainy. And you want to know if it rains here every day. Lisa, it certainly doesn't rain here every day. We have, I'm not sure what your rain in Phoenix is. It's probably, I'm going to guess that your rainfall there is probably about 10 inches, maybe 10 inches a year. And here, the rainfall is probably about 16 inches, 16 to 18 inches on average. Although average as a concept here for rain is not a very good one. There's some waterbuck over there. We're just going to have a look at them quickly. We're just going to quickly have a look at these waterbuck. Good morning. Hello there.
another game drive going past in a car that sounds like an 18-wheeler truck. Young bulls. Now, before you came to us, we were watching a whole lot of enormous bulls together. Don't know why they were all together, but I suspect it's got a lot to do with the fact that the water's all drying up, and so they need to, although they are normally territorial around water because there's so little water, I suspect they are making friends with each other and not being particularly territorial about things. Juma really has an amazing proliferation of waterbuck. I've never seen a place that has so many waterbuck. They're very successful out here. They're a good size, you see, because they will avoid, once they get to adulthood, the only real threats that they face are from lions and hyenas. So size is always a good thing out here if you can maintain it. So an impala is a sort of odd, awkward size. It's a good meal for a lion, a leopard, a wild dog, a cheetah, a hyena, even a smaller thing like a caracal. Whereas if you're a steenbok, if you're tiny, a lion will swallow you quickly, but it's much easier to hide away from them. And the waterbuck is obviously a good size, too big for most leopards. The sound you can hear is very angry, lilac-breasted roller. It's a very quiet morning. There is a wind. This front you can see from the sky has very clearly blown in now. And so there is a bit of eeriness about it, which is actually quite nice, because yesterday was, not to put too fine a point on it, stinking hot. I always find the heat much more easy to deal with when the vegetation is green, but when it's dry and dusty and windy and still blistering, I find it a little bit tiresome as we come out of the winter. It also takes time to get used to the heat, of course. Right, well, shall we press on to the hyena then, Bryan? On we go. I'm hoping that because the day is quite cool, they will be out still and perhaps frolicking about and being generally entertaining as they normally are. Oh, look at this Bateleur. It's beautiful. Edward, I'm so glad you enjoyed the Stierling's wren warbler, number 90 on your list. That's excellent. You've got quite a few to go. And there, of course, I'm sure you've got that one already. That's a Bateleur. That's a male Bateleur. And watch how he flies. Wobble and very shallow wing beats. With such a short tail, balance is crucial and very difficult in a wind like this, so there'll be very shallow wing beats. Nice, Bryan. I hope you all appreciated Bryan's camera work there. Quite interesting. Scott has got a large herd of animals that we don't very often see. Well, we see the bulls, but not always the breeding ones. So we're going to pop across to him, and I'll see you just now.
Welcome back, everyone, and we came into this area in the hope of finding some tracks of Shadow and her cub, But this is what we found instead. How awesome is this? It's a large herd of buffalo. It's been quite some time since we have seen a large herd of all different shapes and sizes. And quite often you can find lions trailing these large herds. I don't think we're necessarily going to get lucky this morning. Tracks of the Inkahuma Proud have been found in Buffels Hook, north of us, and there's no other lion that we know of in this area. I also have no idea how large this herd is. They've been crossing this road for quite some time now, and it looks like they're going to continue to do so for a little bit longer, possibly a couple of hundred of buffalo. And as you look at all the different individuals within this herd, what you need to look for, if you'd like to differentiate between male and female, is that the males will often have a very large crown where the horn meets in the center of their head, whereas the females will lack that crown, and they'll often have a tuft of hair. So this is a female we're looking at kind of in the center of your shot. You can see that tuft of hair coming out the center. And you'll see the males have got a much bigger bulge of keratin. So it's mainly females that we're seeing. And I'll wait until a big male comes. I'm sure it won't be long until we do see a big male. But both males and females will have the horns. You'll also notice that there are a lot of birds sitting on the backs of these buffalo, and these are the red-billed oxpeckers. Mainly there could be some yellow-billed oxpeckers as well, but they are a lot more rare to see, and I've only managed to be able to show you the yellow-billed oxpeckers on one occasion so far. There's a big male. You can see how he's not actually that big and old, but you can see that keratin crown at the center of his head. Wonderful. Now, there's a strong chance that these animals would have been chased by a lion, and that's why they're quite nervous this morning, and also that combined with the wind. You'll also notice one of the females has got a collar, and I wonder where she was collared. And this will be for research to monitor where the herds move over the seasons. Sadly though, it's not information that's readily available to us, and there's a strong chance she was collared within the Greater Kruger National Park, and she has moved into the Sabi Sands from there. And it's wonderful how we are part of a massive, very, very natural ecosystem, 3 million hectares in size. And wouldn't it be interesting to know what information is being gathered from the radio transmitter around her neck? But it's these windy conditions that are getting the buffalo a little bit nervous, and they will also, like most other herbivores, show signs of anxiety and nervousness when it is very windy, as they can't be sure of where scent is coming from. And they also know that it's very easy for predators to approach when it's windy because they cannot hear and see quite as well. There's a lot of ambient noise as well as movement of grass and bushes that can help disguise the approach of the predators. What a pleasant surprise this is. You must be interested to know who is controlling the movements of these multitude of buffalo. And the theory is that there's a party of the older females that are called pathfinders, and it's these pathfinders that determine where the herd will move, where their next food will come from, as well as where their next water source will come from. And I can tell you that they are heading to a waterhole now called One Eye Pan. Sadly, we can't go there. Everywhere on the left of the road that they are crossing is Sibambile, where we are not permitted access. But that's where they are going. And hopefully they will come back onto Juma once they've finished drinking there, but impossible to tell what their movements will be. On our way into this area, I got a crackly update over the radio from Gareth, one of the new guides at Sibambili, and he said that Tingana and Kwatile were seen mating in this similar area yesterday afternoon, and their general direction was moving north, so kind of to where we are now, but I haven't seen any tracks of them, and it was yesterday afternoon, so they could have moved a long distance from here. What's interesting about this, though, is that Kwatile is a female leopard that we've only seen, I think, once and possibly on one other occasion when I wasn't around, but she usually hangs out much further to the south of where we are, and the last time we actually saw her mating, it was with Mvula, and that was probably about 4 months ago, so obviously she either lost her cubs that she may have given birth to, or simply didn't conceive from that session of mating with Mvula. And what's also interesting about her being here is that she is way, way far out of her territory, but that's not uncommon for female leopards, because when they are in season, they may travel quite far to mate with males that buffer their area, so there could be several males that they may want to mate with to give them the false sense of fatherhood. And she's come into Tingana's territory here to mate with him, and wouldn't it be wonderful if we got to see her after not seeing her for so long, as well as Tingana and them mating. So that's a good prospect, and usually leopards mate for 3 to 5 days, so they could very well be mating today. I'm not sure how long they were mating for before they were found yesterday, but there is still a chance of that happening a little bit later on. Let's take a closer look here. I'm wondering how much longer these buffalo will keep streaming past us. There must at least be 300 or 400 members of this herd, as a rough estimate from what we've seen so far. I'm just going to get my binoculars up and ready to see if we can't find you any yellow-billed oxpeckers amongst the more common red-billed. It gives you a very good idea just of how dry and dusty it is at the moment. As when they run up, they kick up a cloud of dust. I'm just going to reposition the vehicle ever so slightly. It looks like there's no more members that are going to be passing in front of us, but a portion of the herd is split and passing down to the south of where we are. Clown Sharon has just made a funny comment saying that it's like waiting for a train to cross, and that's a great analogy. It's a very long stream of buffalo, no different to the carriages of a train passing by over this road. You'll notice also weeks of birthing usually tiny babies born in the middle of winter. An array of different sized and shaped youngsters. You can hear the shrill calls of the oxpeckers as well. And they're enjoying this very loud. And they're enjoying this very loud flicking of their sights. Got a spot here. Another reason that I haven't touched on why they could be kind of running a little bit in that direction is that they can possibly sense the water ahead of them and hear the other buck. Hi guys! Hello! Another game vehicle. Don't worry, Charlie, we're not going to leave until you get to see the very last one crossing. Oh, this is quite a nice bull. Got a very wide spread of horns. Just going to get on the radio quickly, two more. Hey, there's that big bull. Look at how cool he is. He looks in great condition, even though it is the dry. So we still haven't seen the last one, Charlie, so don't worry, we're still waiting for that to happen. Play close by so that I can hear his comp. Can any station help me with an update on anything else that's happening on Safari this morning? Ah, these radios do not make our lives very easy, but we will hopefully at some point get a... Ah, these radios do not make our lives very easy, but we will hopefully at some point get an... I'm just going to move the vehicle. There's a billion car to the left. That's been their way. Yes, all the different... So just a few more. Well, that's to have you. that are struggling to keep up with the herd. So that's what I'm guessing we may see. We may see the weakest individual being the last one. Even this female there that we can see, oh no, that's a male. He doesn't look in good condition. That's why I thought he was a female. So that's a good sign of the older and weaker animals being at the back of the herd. But typically what will happen is under a threat, or when they are under attack from lion, the herd will generally gather around and keep the youngest calves within the middle, and all the big bulls will stand in front and keep a dominant and powerful force between the threats and the weak animals. But initially what will always happen is that lion will ambush them. They'll get a big fright and run off. Every regroup after the initial surprise of the attack, and try and overthrow lion that down, and you think it's got no chance. The herd comes back, chases the lion away, and the calf or whatever animal was brought down lives to tell the story. I'm just going to creep forward a little bit. There's an old female, or maybe we can actually just view her from here. I'm not sure if it is the horn broken, not looking in the best condition. The past. Really would like to know how many buffalo did make up this herd. I'm not sure when we arrived in terms of the sequence of the herd crossing. You see how weak she is right at the back. She might be the last one we see, Charlie. I think she is the last, and you can tell she is to keep up. Great. Well, like I say, no idea exactly. That, but now we are going to send you across to James's vehicle to enjoy something else that he's found for you.
Hello everybody, welcome back to G. Hello everybody, sorry about that, couple of issues, big cold front coming in, changes in atmospheric pressure, aliens stealing parts from our satellites, you know, all sorts of different things. So, but here we are at the magnificent hyena den, and there are quite a lot of hyena around. As you can see, the mother, the matriarch, who I believe to be the matriarch anyway, is the one that's closest to us. She's got a big scar on her back, and she is probably the mother of the, or she is the mother of the very little one. Then the other two little ones are, or the one in main picture now and his sibling, are children of another female, and then there's another slightly bigger cub somewhere around as well. I think the one who the little cub is now harassing. Now I've been to this hyena den 3 times, and only once have we seen the cub before it disappeared briefly. But what a wonderful sight to spend some time with them today on this cool, blustery, eerie, atmospheric, low-felt spring morning. Please don't disappear. I wonder if we shouldn't go around there. What do you think? We'll sit here for a little while, and if the cub keeps disappearing around the side, we'll just move slightly. What do you think, Brian? Will we try that?
No, that's good.
Okay, we're just going to go around the other side quickly. Won't take long. Watch your heads, everybody. Okay. Bryan is just extricating, well actually he's pulling a tree down. He's basically done an elephant job on this Brigham tree. Well done, Bryan.
Thank you.
Does pay to have size. Again, everybody. Oh, this will be a nice view in here. Just going to very slowly sneak in here. Look at that. That is spectacular. All here, 2 adults, 3 older cubs, one of them older than the other 2, and then of course the little one. And look how that cub, I think, if I'm not mistaken, born in May, June, July, August, now 4 months old, is starting to lose its black color and getting its spots. Probably just over 3 months actually. I think late May it was born. And its young cousin there obviously taking slight exception to the needle-like little teeth that are threatening to bite it in a particularly sensitive area, it would seem that the cub is going for. As I've said before, this behavior is not uncommon and it is extremely important. This is how children, humans, cubs, fawns, lambs, what other kind of little things do you get? Foals, pups, that's how they learn, or that's how their neurology develops. It's only through this play behavior that the coordination needed for adulthood is developed. Now, I think that this cub is a female. There are various reasons for my thinking that, and I might be wrong. But the first is that when we first saw her, I'm going to refer to her as a her, she had a scar already on the front of her body, and I suspect that came from a siblicide fight. If 2 hyenas, females, are born to the matriarch, one will kill the other. And I suspect that's why she was quite injured from a very early age. The other reason is that she has got... Hyena is difficult to sex at the best of times because the females have a pseudo-penis and pseudo-scrotum, but the shape of the pseudo-penis on the female is different from that of the male. And the female tends to be fairly straight and shapeless at the end, and I think this one has got a fairly shapeless one. It is difficult to see though. I might be wrong. But those are the reasons I think this is a female. You can see them. You can see the little path that the little one's walking along. That path has been worn by the hyenas coming in and out of this den on a continuous basis. And very shortly you will be able to see some form of dominance behavior if she is the daughter of the matriarch, which we think she is. She stands in line, of course, to inherit the clan from her mother. There is a sort of genetic lineage to the matriarchy of a hyena clan. And so she will very shortly, as soon as she gets all hyenas of equi-size to her, I mean, she's smaller than all the others at the moment, but as soon as she gets a little bit bigger than them, they will start to show her deference. They will start to behave in a subordinate manner. And you can see how confident she is, walking around on her own and, playing with the bigger ones and not seeming to be in any sort of, or not demonstrating any form of, what's the word I'm searching for, Brian? It's not a hard word. Subordinance isn't a noun as far as I know. Anyway, she has not showing any subordinate behavior. No running off there. I don't think she's going to stay away from this den or stray too far from the den. But the others will forage on a day like this. It's very cool. So the need to lie down in the shade for much of the heat of the day is not so strong. Just a quick one, Brian. Do you think that this one is the matriarch with the scar on her back? Okay, so I think this is quite interesting. I don't think this is the matriarch we're looking at. If you look at her back, she doesn't have that big scar. And she also looks a bit younger. So this is probably the mother of these two cubs here that are basically entangled in her. And one of them certainly seems to be attempting some form of a suckling motion, so probably not the mother of the very little one, and probably a nice explanation for why when the little one did come up, she kind of snapped at her a bit. And hyena, much like their lion cousins, will spend a long time sleeping, but definitely less than lions. Lions sleep 20 hours a day. I'd say these guys probably about 15 or 16. There is another hole around the other side, which I truly hope the little one doesn't go into. The ears back there. It's quite subordinate. Urinating there. Entirely sure what that's about, or why he or she is choosing to pee on the back of her foot. Oh, this is interesting. Look at this. They'll now all smell the urine. Just reaffirm the sort of dominance hierarchy by sniffing genitals and things. I'm so glad I'm not a hyena. There's the little one, right? Coming over the top. Look at that. Excellent question. We can see here probably 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 hyena, and I haven't seen more than 8 in one place at Juma. I think Scott saw maybe 10 at one stage. Anyway, we don't tend to have enormous clans here. Now, past this isn't a big hyena clan for this area, and there are no very big hyena clans in this area. And you ask the question, is there a specific reason why they're much bigger in a place like Kenya and Tanzania? Pass, absolutely. That is purely a function of the distribution and abundance of prey species. So in Kenya and Tanzania, you have those vast herds of antelope, and they provide an enormous amount of food, both in terms of hunting and in terms of scavenging for the hyenas. The hyenas there will hunt a lot, but they will also, if you imagine a hyena following that migration of wildebeest across the Serengeti plains, most mortality is actually natural. There are 2 million wildebeest that do that migration, and there's a lot of mortality that happens purely from injury, and when they birth, of course, there's an enormous amount of afterbirth and that sort of thing. And the hyenas, because of that enormous food source, will form much bigger clans than they do here. The baby is now supping on the ear of a cousin. To get itself into trouble, I think, fairly soon. Yeah, you can see this female is not particularly tolerant of the little cub. Not aggressive, but definitely not her mother. Where the matriarch would be, probably out foraging. We've seen the matriarch as far afield as Buffelshoek Dam. Now that is from here about 5 kilometers as the crow flies. No, probably about 3 kilometers as the crow flies. So I mean along the path that the hyena would have taken, probably about 5 k's away. So, a few days ago I had an amazing sighting at the Juma waterhole. Ooh, the little one is now in a lot of trouble. Wonderful sighting at the Juma waterhole the other day. And there were 2 youngsters. I'm not sure if you can hear them. I will explain what's going on now. I just want to watch this. That is disgusting. I feel ill. Bryan, aren't you glad you don't have to greet people like that? Is that not astonishing? So what's happening there, I mean, it's just a greeting ritual. Everyone's making peace. The most senior female here urinated on the floor. Everybody's having a taste and and rolling in it, of course, which is what one does if one is a hyena. And this, of course, is why, Anna Marie, the hyenas that I saw at the Juma waterhole the other day smelt so horrific. This is what hyenas do. They roll around in dung, rotten flesh, and obviously their own urine, which is not a particularly appealing trait that they have, but that's what they do. And I do think that those 2 that I saw, while not here, were part of the same clan, and that's because they are right in between the 2 dens. They're right in between the 2 den sites that we know of. This one, and of course the other one, which is on a place called Philemon's Cutline. And hyenas are highly territorial. They tend not to overlap clan boundaries unless they have huge territories, and so they can get extremely violent. Remember, the more a carnivore lives in a group, the more violent they will be with each other when they're territorial. So wild dogs not so violent with each other because they're not particularly territorial, but hyenas absolutely can be. I've seen tremendous fights. There's something coming in here. It looks like it's coming in. That's so sweet. I would consider picking it up and putting it on my lap and giving it a tickle if it hadn't been rolling in pee. Now I am a bit confused here, I have to confess. I think that the three middle-sized ones, like the one looking at us now, are all the same size, Brian? Don't you think? But before we saw two of that size and then one larger one. So I don't know what's going on here. There are three here that look to me to be the same size. And I think that one there, the middle one that you can see in picture, is not the offspring of the one that's currently suckling the other two, because it's not suckling, of course. So I'm not sure where that slightly larger baby has gone. So you can see quite clearly how close and inquisitive they are. Now, if you look at them when they stand up again, when I initially got in here, I thought that one of these other cubs, not the baby, was one of the older ones. But all three of these littler ones are the same size as each other. Anyway, I think time will tell when we see the rest of the clan around. Look at this little thing. This is so special to see. It really is just spectacular. Such a privilege to sit here and have these hyenas behave for us in a totally natural fashion. Now the little one will always go towards the hole when it's feeling a little bit threatened, because it's totally safe in there. Even from the other adult hyena, it will have its own little specially sized shelf inside, to which no other hyena will be able to get. Much surer on its feet than it was when we first found it. Hyena will suckle much longer than the other carnivores. You can see that one there. The two that are suckling are probably about, I would say, 6 to 7 months old. And they'll suckle for up to a year. Just to give you a quick update I've received on the radio, everyone's asking about the lions and what's going on and where they are. The Nkahuma pride, which consists of 4 adult females, 2 sub-adult females, and a young male of about 3.5 years, was found yesterday north in Buffelshoek, and they've just found Junior, the young male. He's fine. He's on his own at the moment, though. He seems to have left the pride for the moment. We don't know where they've gone, but he's sitting just north of us on Biffle's Hook. Something's coming in here that's making the little one back in there. Isn't that interesting? Looking behind us, I can't see anything, Brian. Can you see anything? Maybe the little one smelled something. The others don't see. Well, one of the adults is looking that way, or was. You can see looking the same direction the youngster was. Maybe a smell carried on the wind. You can hear the wind blowing. The two apex predators in this area are the lion, well, us, of course, we are the apex predator, but below us we have the lion and the hyena, and they are very much, they jostle for who's number one and who's number two. In this area, it's definitely the lion that sits at number one and the hyena at number two, and they have very similar senses, all have excellent ears, very good eyes because they operate at night. I suspect the lion's eyes are probably slightly more impressive because they do have to do a bit more hunting in this area, and they're certainly designed to hunt and pounce, so the accuracy of their attack needs to be that much more keen than it is with the hyenas, which tend to just chase prey down until it drops dead of exhaustion. And the noses, of course, of the hyena for sniffing out carrion are quite exceptional. You can just get an impression there from the sight of the clouds, lovely green tree, of the atmosphere that there is around here. It's cool, it's blustery, it's kind of mysterious, and obviously if you're a hyena, fairly smelly because you happen to be lying in 2 puddles of urine. Yes, I am talking about you lying in urine, that is correct. There's definitely something on the wind that they're picking up, that they're smelling. And I'm just going to quickly address a question that came through. I'm not sure who it came from exactly, but I'll get an update on that, about climate change, because it's relevant while we're sitting here. And it came from Susan in San Francisco. Now, you want to know, Suze, are there any obvious effects of climate change in this area? And the answer is no, not yet, as far as we know. Nothing conclusive. But we do know that climate change is happening. Yes, there's some debate over why it's happening, but it certainly is happening. And it would definitely seem that to have anthropogenic effects, at least causes, so we are causing it in some way. But quite regardless of that, Suze, it is a good question that you ask, because it will have an effect. The hotter it gets and the higher the CO2 content of the atmosphere gets, what we will find out here is that the thicker the bush will get. Now this will happen over a period probably of 20 or 30 years if the climate and atmospheric conditions continue to change the way they are. And that's because for wood to form, or CO2, a higher CO2 or carbon dioxide concentration of the atmosphere will tend to favor the development of woody plants at the expense of grasses. And so you would find, if CO2 levels continue to rise And if the temperature continues to rise, so the number of woody plants in the area will go up and the amount of grass will go down. That's as far as I understand it. Of course, there are probably hundreds of other variables that we as human beings are not yet privy to and don't understand. But that's the sort of general understanding of what would happen if current trends continue. Very nice question. Thank you for that, Suze. We're going to just nip across to Scott quickly, see what he's been doing. I know he's been exploring on Arethusa, and he'll give us an update, and we'll be back with you just now.
Welcome back, everyone, and it's great to have you with us again. I shot onto Arethusa temporarily. I couldn't resist the temptation to go and look for Shadow and Madiba, but didn't find too much or any real sign of them, but was worth a try. It's been a while since we've seen the two of them, either alone or together, but maybe this afternoon our luck will change. The weather's got really cold and windy. I've had to put on another jacket. Wium's got a blanket wrapped around him. And it certainly wasn't this bad as we headed out. Wium actually rigged up the camera in his pajamas, which consist of not too much clothing. So it was quite warm earlier on, but this cold front really does seem to be getting a hold of us now. I hope you've enjoyed your time at the hyena den with James. It sounded like you had a quality sighting with him there. I'm probably going to head down towards Treehouse Waterhole. That's my next plan. It's an area that has yet to be searched this morning, so we may find some interesting updates there. Update on the radio, and I just want to find out exactly what's going on. It sounds like the Nkuhuma Pride made a kill last night, and I'm guessing it could have been one of those buffalo from the large herd that we saw. That's why they could have been quite skittish, having been freshly chased by the lion. And it sounds like another animal has stolen their kill from them. The Nkuhumas have got a lot of blood on their face wherever they've been found, which is sadly not too close to where we can go. And I'm really interested to know what stole their kill. Possibly hyena, or possibly some other lions. There's just quite a lot of chatter on the radio now, so I'm waiting for my turn to try and gather some information. Aubrey for Scott. Sorry, I missed. What do you think stole the nyama from the Nkuhumas? Okay, copy. Thanks very much, Orbs. Just to let everyone know, there was a herd of about 800 buffalo that crossed from Bateleur into Sibambilia a little bit earlier. So as you heard, I got an update from Mornay. He was in the buffalo sighting with us, and he was there from the beginning, and he thinks there were about 800 of them. And now I've got some really interesting information from Aubrey. It looks like one of the Birmingham males chased the entire Inkuhuma pride off their buffalo kill, and he's now enjoying the spoils of that kill. So obviously the Birminghams have split up, because some of them have been located very far east of us, and this one individual is here to the west. Unless, of course, it's another male lion. It is difficult to tell who's who. And with the crackly radios that we are experiencing today, sometimes the messages we get aren't very clear. So I'm not sure exactly how many Birminghams have been found at Nkoro to the east of us. Either way, what we can assure you is that the Nkuhumas made a kill, and a single male lion, possibly a Birmingham, did steal the meat from them. Same question through from both Ed and Cindy, and they're interested to know what future lies ahead for Junior, the young male within the Nkuhuma pride, especially with the Birmingham coalition around. And I think what's going to happen is he's either going to be killed, or he's going to have to do a very, very good job at flying below the radar. And he may end up many, many kilometers away from here, especially with the turmoil that's going on. That's what I would do if I was him. I would move out of this area and try and fly below the radar and hopefully find another young male or two, possibly even an older male that's looking for a young blood to help bolster his team. So there is a chance that he could form a coalition with other lions. But more typically, coalitions are formed from a very young age, and it's males that are born within the same natal pride that team up like the Birmingham boys. So they would have been born together into the same pride, maybe not at the exact same time, because they have slightly varying ages. So that's the most typical way that a coalition is formed, but from time to time, you will get completely random males that are mature but not yet dominant that can join forces. It's usually after a scrap, so they see one another, slap one another around a bit, and then kiss and make up and become friends for life. Sounds like on the radio now there's a whole load of lions moving around to the east of us, a few lioness, nobody knows what's going on, and that's typical when there is a pride takeover that we're experiencing now, or a coalition takeover. There's turmoil amongst the lion populations, and that was an update I've just heard from Craig over the radio. One lone wildebeest, and you may have got a glimpse of a few zebra that he's tagging along with. Not uncommon for big and old wildebeest to team up with other herbivores to help have a few extra eyes and ears around to keep safe. And he's chosen a small dazzle of zebra. It looks like just three, possibly three young stallions, who, just like the Birmingham boys, need to try and establish themselves and get a harem of their own. Interestingly enough, another update on that large herd of buffalo. I heard some yellow-billed oxpeckers were seen on them, so sadly we didn't get to see any, but there were some there, so if they do come back onto the property, we will certainly be trying to keep a close eye out for those special birds. Great. So I'm really desperate to try and get to Treehouse down to see if there's any sign of any life in that area of the property, because I know nobody has driven there yet this morning. Questions just come through from Trudy, and she's brought up a good point. And because the Birmingham Coalition are from time to time splitting up, and sometimes one individual is missing from the team of 5, if that individual got caught out when he was alone by the Matimba males and was killed, would the other 4 members of the coalition give up their plight to take over this area? And truly there is a small chance that that may happen, but I still think that 4 of them together is still a very formidable team, and they'll continue and will eventually inevitably be big enough and strong enough to be able to acquire a territory of their own. It may slow them down ever so slightly, but I don't think they're just going to give up. They are programmed and driven to want to take over, and the drive to do that will, in time, overwhelm the older lions in this area. A few minutes away from the Treehouse waterhole, and like I said, nobody has checked in this area yet this morning, so I'm looking forward to seeing if we don't find any interesting clues here. On Trudy's question earlier, Georgianne is interested to know if the Matimba males will actively attack a single male if he is alone, and yes, without a doubt they will see that as a great opportunity to try and increase their chances of staying dominant for longer here. And I'm almost certain that if they got half a chance against one of those Birminghams, they are going to really make the most of it. And I fear that if it is 2 Matimbas against 1 Birmingham, that Birmingham is probably going to come off second best. The Matimbas are considerably larger, And what's important to remember is that their helmets are much bigger. They're big manes, which are there more to protect them than to impress the females. So even though aesthetics are important in nature, the main reason for a male lion to have that big mane is it's a protection for the battles that he gets into. And the bigger the mane, the more protection he has. The Birmingham boys, they've still got a way to go in terms of their helmets. Well, Wium and I are going to continue down towards the Treehouse waterhole as planned, and we are going to send you back to James, who's still at the hyena den. Enjoy, and hopefully we'll have some updates for you shortly.
Hello everybody, welcome back to the hyena den, where the hyenas have gone into a sweet state of relaxation on this eerie steel grey morning, where the lions are seemingly in a great deal of upheaval. Wonderful updates there that I believe Scott has given you about the Nkahuma pride now sitting chased away from a buffalo killed by one of the Birmingham guys, and the young Nkahuma male junior off to the west somewhere, probably also smarting from being chased. Now, if I was a Birmingham male, and I don't know what Scott thinks about this, but if I was a Birmingham male on my own, and my cohorts had headed east so far, almost into the Kruger, I would be pretty nervous of that Nkahuma lion. I think Junior is going to find his courage fairly soon, and he is not a small fellow, that. And I think that he may deliver something of a pasting to a Birmingham male, should that Birmingham male challenge him. But what is interesting, and we don't know which Birmingham male it is, of course, because we don't go up there. It's probably the slightly older one, the slightly more confident one, the one with the slightly fuller mane. And that'll be how he managed to chase off a whole pride without, with no repercussions for himself. The other thing, of course, is that clearly the Birminghams are killing females around the place, and so he's probably tremendously aggressive in a conflict situation. Maybe that's how he managed to chase them all off. I don't know. It's all very fascinating, and eventually it'll play out and things will return to peace, much like the hyenas are feeling as we speak. Those two youngsters have remained suckling continuously since you've been gone with Scott, so they haven't done a lot. The baby is probably fast asleep in the middle of his little hole. They have looked up every so often and looked to the same direction where they were looking before, and I suspect there's something on the air that's making them look up and smell, or maybe a sound that they're hearing every so often. So that is the story of the hyenas, and the story of the lions, of course, is that much more upheavalous at the moment. Is upheavalous a word, Brian? So, Janet, I'm going to answer your question, and then we're going to head away and see what else this magnificent wilderness and eerie day has to offer us. Janet, you want to know, has a hyena ever jumped into the car? Probably as a result of having watched them come so close just now. Janet, the other day when we were watching two hyenas frolic about in the water like two sort of domestic dogs released into the wild, one of them came very close, looked up, and looked like it might lift up its back feet, or lift up its front feet and put them onto the door. But I just gave the door a little tap. So the answer, Janet, is no, I've never had a hyena in the vehicle. If I had had a hyena in the vehicle, you can rest assured that my face wouldn't look quite like it does now. It would probably be substantially more scarred. I'd be missing a couple of fingers and possibly a leg. So a hyena in the vehicle would be an extremely unpleasant thing, and it would be probably about as unpleasant as having a leopard in the vehicle, and marginally less unpleasant than having a lion in the vehicle. Either of them, all of them, would result in probably quite severe injury. So no, Janet, no hyena in the vehicle. And you must remember, they see the vehicle as a kind of, it's not very threatening to them. They're a little bit weary of it though, and it smells like a car to them. It smells like petrol and oil and engine And so they don't really know what to make of it. They recognize us, I think, but they don't see us as the threat in the vehicle until we stand up or we make a bit of a noise, and then normally all the animals will move away from the vehicle. Okay, here we go. We're going to pull out of here, see what else we can see. We'll head down towards the Juma waterhole, which I'm sure many of you are watching anyway. See what happens to be there. Okay, and while we're pulling out of here, we'll nip back to Scott, and you can go and look at some birds. Apparently there's a really nice bird party going on a Treehouse waterhole, and I'll see you just now.
Welcome back, everyone, and apologies for my misinformation. I'm told James has already checked Treehouse waterhole this morning, and I'm not sure if this juvenile African fish eagle was here when he came past, but it's been a while since we've seen one of them. And there's also two saddle-billed stork who are just relaxing at the water's edge for now. But I'm thinking of maybe camping out here for the rest of the drive, because it would be wonderful to see them hunting. Although at the moment it's not looking too promising, as they are slowly heading away from the water. So maybe they've already eaten their fill. We are so fortunate to have this resident pair of saddle-billed storks on our property. There's very few of them in the whole of the Greater Kruger National Park, but what you find is where a pair has set up residence, you can get very easy and common sightings of them, but they are few and far between, possibly only 100 pairs in the whole 3 million hectares. This is the female on the right. She's got the bright yellow eye, and she's all of a sudden started charging towards the water's edge. So maybe I was wrong. Maybe we will get to see some hunting. Let's watch closely here. Now, what you will find is that they'll often use their feet to try and feel their prey and then stab their beak in thereafter. Or another technique that they use is probing into the water with an open beak, and with incredible speed they clamp down on anything that tries to squirm away. And there was a little swirl of water where some fish came to the surface, and I think that caught her attention. And one thing we should all prepare ourselves for is that if she does manage to catch a fish, that juvenile fish eagle will in all likelihood swoop down and try and steal it from her. And some of you may remember that wonderful sighting we had not very long ago, where an adult fish eagle attempted to steal a tilapia from a saddle-billed stork at the Juma waterhole, and in the commotion the saddle-billed stork dropped the fish straight back into the water, and it escaped to live another day. Just heard another update on the radio that I would like to let you know. It is in all likelihood one Birmingham male that did chase the Inkahumas. The other 4 members were found on Nkoro, so that has been confirmed now. And isn't it interesting how that coalition may split up. Oh! Beautiful, well done, Wium. Tricky flying conditions, it's very windy, and that makes it equally difficult for Wium to try and stay on the bird. But I wonder where it's decided to head off to now. Come on, storks, now's your time. The fish eagle's gone. There's nobody here to steal your prey from you. Maybe we'll see a change in their behavior now. Now, the main fish species that we get here in the Sabi Sands, especially in the waterholes, are tilapia and catfish or barbel. So it's two main species that we will find. And Anna Marie's interested to know if there are any eels. And not that I know of, I've done a lot of fishing within the Sabi Sands and never caught an eel, but within the Sand River and within the Sabi River, which are the two rivers that flow through the Sabi Sands, and that's what gives it its name, the Sabi River and the Sand River, I have heard reports of there being eels, and they will certainly be fed on by animals like this. So Anna Marie, there's the answer to your question. I've never actually seen an eel here though, so not sure how many there are, but like I say, in the Sand River it is possible. And also in the Sand River there are other fish. The tiger fish occur in the Sand River, as well as labios or scalies, which is a carp-like fish, as well as a host of other smaller fish. So the Sand River is a much better ecosystem, or a much more diverse ecosystem, I should rather say, than a lot of the waterholes here. But sadly, we don't have access to any stretch of river frontage just yet, but hopefully one day people will allow us to traverse their land as well, and we'll get to show you the beautiful Sand River or Sabi River. But for now it flows to the south of us, and it really is a beautiful, beautiful area of the Sabi Sands. Come on, storks. And Joshua in Texas is interested to know about the catfish we get here and whether they've got very sharp spines coming out of their fins that can be very painful if impaled. And they do have some fins and barbs that you do need to be careful of, but nothing too serious. So I don't think it is the same as the catfish that you get in Texas. And I know there are other catfish even in Africa that will also be able to erect their pectoral fins out to the side, kind of perpendicular to their body. And if you do get impaled by them, it's very painful, but not poisonous, so it's not really a sting. Well, because the storks don't seem to be doing too much, I think we will probably carry on and see what else we can find. But let's give it a few more moments, and maybe they'll change their tune. And as you can see, this pond is drying out and therefore a lot of fish may die. And that'll mainly be the tilapia, who don't have the ability to encompass themselves in a layer of mucus like the catfish and survive in a completely dried out pond until the next rains arrive. So the catfish will always be present. They can make a plan through the dry season. Incredible adaptation that they have. But the tilapia certainly don't have that ability. And Siberia Zumi is interested to know if the landowners will ever restock the water holes. And yes, they certainly may do. In my history, I've never actually seen them doing it. Oh. What's happening here? Finally. That's better. Come on. So, I don't think it is necessary, and it may happen from time to time, and I'm guessing that's how the tilapia and the catfish got into these dams in the first place. As they are man-made, they aren't natural water holes. So it could very well happen. I certainly would if I was a landowner, but that's probably just because I love fishing. So it is something that could well happen, and what I'll do is chat with the landowner here at Juma next time he's around and see if he can give us any interesting stories as to what happened many years ago when these dams were initially made and where the stock fish came from. Well, Rita's just mentioned that the storks have got stage fright, and it is interesting. I mean, we've spent quite a lot of time with them, but they are still fairly nervous of the vehicles. So it could be that, Rita, you may very well be correct. But half of me is also saying that because the hunting is quite easy at the moment, that they are possibly have already had their breakfast for the morning and therefore aren't hugely compelled to make their next meal, or make their next kill rather. Okay, well, earlier on we got to see hundreds of live buffalo crossing the road from Juma into Sibambili, and now James is going to show you a buffalo that's in a slightly different state. Enjoy, and we will see you a little bit later.
I'm not sure what inspired that in me, but it felt the right eerie sort of sound to play as we look at this buffalo. And in case you were wondering, this buffalo is no longer alive. It is well dead, killed here by the 5 Birmingham males a few days back. Now, there are a couple of very interesting things about this, and Teresa, you asked us to come back here. Slightly morbid, I think, but Teresa, thank you for your request, because it is actually fascinating. So the first thing to look at here, there are a number of things. The first thing to look at is the nasal cavity and the left eye, or what used to be the left eye, and there are a whole lot of little white spots there that you can see. Now, if you look closely, you'll see that those little white spots are in fact moving, and that is because they are fly larvae or maggots. So a fly will come onto a buffalo like this, lay its eggs, and the maggots will then feed on the rotting flesh. Now, we think of that as a very dirty thing. Those maggots apparently are actually very good wound cleaners. And certainly I've heard of incidents where wounds, if you have a wound that is festering slightly, you put maggots on it and they do clean that wound quite nicely. So interesting there. Then, if we follow the line of the vertebra, of the spine, down, we can see there, you can see some white flashes. Now, we can't get much closer because of the bush around here, but those white flashes are feathers, down feathers from vultures. And in the trees around us, we can't really see them here. They're kind of behind us and behind a whole lot of other trees. There are still quite a few vultures, white-headed vultures mainly, and possibly some hooded vultures. And I think the bigger ones like the leopard-faced will have moved on by now. But there's still quite a lot left to eat there. There's quite a lot of the sort of cartilaginous intercostal stuff between the ribs, and there's no real meat left, but there is definitely some intercostal stuff that the hyenas will come and eat. They will bite off. You can see this, the length of the ribs there. They will eat about half of those ribs eventually. And I think the fact that so much remains of this buffalo, I mean, it's definitely still feeding quite a few creatures, is testament to the fact that the hyena clan in this area is not very big. I don't think it's a big clan. I've certainly, like I've said, I think the most we've seen together is about 10 of them, and that's not unusual, it's not bad in any way, it's just not a very big clan. I think that in an area with a larger clan of hyenas, this buffalo would have disappeared quite a lot faster than it has. The next thing that will happen, of course, is that the horn moths, especially as we go in towards the summertime, the horn moths will land on the keratin of the horns, and they will lay their eggs there, and the larvae will eat down into the keratin that covers the bone that is inside that sort of black covering on the horns, and they will then eat that up and pupate and fly off. So everything will be used. The skin will eventually be probably eaten by a few hyenas, desperate ones perhaps, and all of those little bits of muscle fiber and ligaments and tendons that are still holding the skeleton together will be devoured by the birds. The feet, possibly hyenas as well. I think only they will be sort of equipped enough to eat off the hooves. And as we know, I mean, if you've ever had a dog, you know that a dog likes to eat buffalo or cow hooves, and so they will also be eaten. And what will remain is the skull. That won't be eaten. A lot of the vertebra will survive unscathed almost, and then slowly after that what will happen is something like a porcupine might come and sample a piece of bone, because they like to do that. They need extra calcium for their quills. A tortoise might even come and chew on some of the bone in order for its shell to reach sort of, to gain the calcium necessary for shell development. And then, of course, in dry times, and we've seen this many times out here, some of the antelope, like the nyala especially, will come and suck on the bones when they're a bit cleaner of meat than they are now. And that gives them minerals that they don't necessarily get in the vegetation that they eat. Phosphorus and calcium being two of the minerals that they'll get from sucking on the bones. But I think sucking on that maggot-infested leg bone, for example, or the rest of the carcass would result in them getting quite sick at this stage. So the herbivores will definitely stay away from it now. The other scavengers that might come and eat a piece would be the jackals, but we don't get many jackals here. I'm really not sure why. And those that we do get are side-striped, and the side-striped tend to be more omnivorous. And I think that's about all that's going to eat on this. Yes, Siberia, Zumi, you've said, are there any wasps or other animals that will come and eat on this flesh? There are a few. Now, one of them, of course, is dung beetles. A lot of dung beetles will eat on festering flesh, if you like, and so they're not only eating dung. And I remember catching a dung beetle once in my room, intent on investigating it, and I held it up to my face to look at it, and it smelt. Basically, we found a honey badger the other day that had died, and it was the worst smell I've ever had in my life. Seconded only by that dung beetle that I caught, and that's because it had been sitting on a carcass somewhere, devouring the rotten flesh, and it really did stink horrifically. Wasps, Siberia, no, I don't think wasps will eat this. Wasps tend to be almost entirely herbivorous. In terms of what they eat. Well, no, that's not true. They do eat a lot of spiders and that sort of thing, but I don't think a wasp will eat any flesh off this particular carcass. And you can also see the jawbone. If we zoom in there on the jawbone. Liz in Wisconsin, you want to know what happens to the teeth. Do they get eaten? They don't get eaten. I'm sure they get chewed upon, possibly by porcupines and other animals like that. Maybe the tortoises as well. What you'll find is that they will disperse from here. They'll get buried. They'll be, covered in sand and perhaps grow into the grass, but they won't disappear completely. And you can see them still there in the bottom jaw, and there will be some in the top jaw as well. They don't remember that buffalo don't have incisors that are particularly big. They've got small ones on the top and bottom that help them to crop away at the grass, but they don't have big incisors. So that is maybe swallowed. When the front of the jaw and the front of the nose is eaten, I suspect those teeth are probably swallowed by the lions and the hyenas, and they'll pass probably fairly unharmed through the digestive system out into some of those steaming piles of lion dung that really smell quite unbelievably horrific, and yet are still sampled. Even that doesn't go to waste out here, Some of the vultures, like the hooded vulture, will happily go and eat a pile of lion dung. I am again pleased that I am not a vulture or a hyena. Yuck. So what I think we should do is just reverse out of here. I think we've probably used this buffalo as much as it's going to be. We're going to go and just have a quick look at the vultures and see if we can't get a good view. I think, it looks like they've all flown off actually. It's quite windy, difficult for them to fly, so I'm not sure where they're going, but they can in a strong wind like this use the wind, if they fly correctly, to get up into the sky. Right, it's been a fascinating morning of different little things and wonderful birds, beautiful Eerie scenery, and magnificent hyena. So thank you very much for your comments and conversation that you've created through your questions. It really is lovely to hear from you, and especially from your new viewers. I think Carolyn in Chicago, you were a first-time viewer, and perhaps one or two others. Thank you very much for your comments. And thank you to Bryan, who forgot his hat today, and he was very worried that he was going to burn his rather fine face in the sun, but luckily there wasn't any sun to burn him today. Thanks to Tara and Louise and Nikki in the final control, and I'm going to hand you back over to the inimitable, magnificent specimen that is Scott Dyson, and he'll say the final goodbyes, and I will see you this afternoon. Bye-bye, and thank you very much.
Isn't it going to be interesting to see what does end up finishing off that buffalo carcass? I'm sure it's going to be a lot of the smaller decomposers and insects, and it's that perfect time of the year where we are seeing more insects and arachnids. And we saw the scorpion earlier, for those of you who weren't tuned in, and Miss Jin's interested to know what animals will feed on scorpions. Well, we know for certain white-tailed mongoose will. We got to see that live the other night when we were testing out the night cam. But a lot of other animals will also eat scorpions, like a lot of the birds, dwarf mongooses, banded mongooses, which are other mongooses that we get out here, honey badgers. What else am I not thinking of? Mainly birds and the smaller predatory mammals will feed on the scorpions. But they are very often very well concealed. So it's animals that can dig and excavate, that can get them out of their burrows, that will mainly be the ones that feed on them. Interestingly, I've just seen another interesting insect that we will see more of and actually hear very often, and that's the spider hunting wasp. It's quite a large wasp, and it's got a loud droning noise like a diesel engine that you hear flying about. And as their name suggests, they hunt spiders and actually lay their eggs within spiders, so that when they hatch, they've got a larder of food to feed on. And what you'll often see the spider hunting wasps doing is excavating burrows that they will bury the spider that they've caught, often quite large spiders, like the baboon spiders. And that will be something that we hopefully get to show you. And on the topic of insects and the weird and wonderful creatures that we will hopefully be seeing, James has asked if we will be seeing any lunar praying mantises, and yes, we will. We will be seeing a host of many different praying mantises, some of which have got incredibly cryptic camouflage and very strange designs. And I really look forward to sharing all these different bugs with you that we get out here. Well, sadly, the sunrise safari is coming to a close. There hasn't been too much sun on the safari, and we're all quite cold. Wium was saying that we're not used to these cold temperatures, so it's probably not as bad as it seems, and I'm sure a lot of you are in a lot colder climates than we are, but we're not very used to it, especially after the hot spell that we've been having. Anyway, thanks very much for joining in, and it's always wonderful to chat with you and share your comments and thoughts and ideas about what's going on at the moment. So thank you for your contributions there. And I guess the highlights of the morning for me was probably seeing that scorpion, although that large herd of buffalo was also a wonderful, wonderful sighting. And you also got to see some fun stuff with James. So all in all, another good day out on safari. Thanks to Tara, who directed the show, and Nikki and Louise lended them a hand. Well done, Wium, on camera. And we're all looking forward to joining on the Sunset Safari later on. See you later.